What's up everyone, Train Freak here, and today I've got my Rock Island Alco RS1 taken apart with a whole bunch of wires everywhere. And that's because I have been tinkering with it, doing something completely out of my comfort zone, but I felt like I did something good, and I'm hoping that it turns out the way I anticipate. But now I've finally got my Soundtraxx Tsunami2 decoder in. And this is it. This is a TSU-PNP board that is for the Alco diesels right there. If you need one of these, part number 885015, let me know. I can hook you up. Also, I plan on putting a couple of these in there. I've got two of them. And these are Soundtraxx's Mini Cube Oval speaker. It is a 16 by 12 by 11.3 millimeter speaker with a built-in baffle. I'm going to put in two of these, so I've got both of them here, and I'll have to wire those in series. You cannot wire those in parallel, because if you do, you'll blow the sound amplifier on the decoder, and then you just wasted $100. And then last but not least, to keep continuous power, I plan on using this current keeper here, but if I cannot get it to fit with this one and I can get it to fit with the other one, which is this model up there, then I will do so, which I do have one of those current keepers here by me somewhere. Well, we'll worry about that later. So if I have to make a change, I will let you know. Alright, so let me go ahead and show you what I've already done, and we can kind of go from there. On the chassis side, I wanted to implement this locomotive for night operations. So what I did is I installed some tubing right here that kind of goes up and down. I super glued it to the chassis frame. And I had to take this truck off to do the rest of this job. But I'm going to slide the truck over. Added some more tubing, and I soldered in a LED right there. There we go. Now you can see it. The size of that LED is an 0402 white LED. So this is going to act as the truck lights for night operations. That way the engineer and the fireman can see the ground to see if the locomotive is moving or not. As far as the other wires here, we've got the rail pickup, and of course we have the positive and negative for the motor. Our decoder will actually just snap on top of the motor board, so having a good pair of scissors always helps. So that way you can easily get the decoder out of the packaging. Or an X-Acto knife works too. When using a decoder, you need to make sure that you know which is which. I'm going to kind of hold it up close a little bit. Hopefully you can see. On the ends, you've got your rail pickups, your left rail, right rail. This is going to be either the headlight or the backup light to know which was which. Flip the decoder upside down, and it's kind of hard to see in the video. If I can get it to focus. I don't know if it's going to focus or not. But it actually says BL on this second tab from the... let me use this. Here we go. This tab here actually says BL right there. And then this says V+, which is the voltage. That's the actual common. Something else to note is that the V+ has an oval contact, where just a standard backup light has a rectangular contact. Same on this side. We have our headlight here, V+ with the oval contact. So that V+ is just literally our common, our lighting common. And that's actually what we're going to solder one of our resistors. I have a 1000 ohm resistor that I've been using to test my LEDs with. But yeah, so now with the Alco RS3 or RS1, this locomotive is actually long hood forward. And one way to notice that is if you look right here by the steps, you should be able to see an F if the camera ever focuses. But there's a little bitty F right here. One end of your locomotive should have an F on it, and that is to denote what side is the front. So we definitely need to make sure that the HL on our decoder faces the front of our locomotive. Basically going to tuck my wires down, and I'm going to go ahead and try to snap this decoder in place. If I can get it to snap. Alright, I got one side in. There. So that way our decoder is not moving anywhere, and now I've got my motor wires tucked up under it, so that way all I got to do is just connect it in, solder it, good to go. Same with these here. The truck lights, the negative I'm going to actually connect to F3, function 3. The positive is actually going to be connected to the resistor because it's going to be with the lighting common. Alright, so that's enough about the chassis for right now. The shell with a whole bunch of wires hanging out, right? Alright, so originally this model had a piece on both ends that actually had a LED bump up to it on the old board, and I've already taken all that apart. And that front LED would actually light up the headlight and both the number boards on both sides. I wanted to be able to isolate the number boards from the headlight. Same on the back with the backup light and the number boards. Because in nighttime operations, all 4 number boards would be lit continuously, no matter the direction. One of the things I did to help my wires is I took a piece of the shrink tubing and I glued it in place and ran my wires through, and that kind of keeps the ends tucked down. I could go and add more tubing in the middle to help keep it more tucked in, but felt like that for this operation or installation is a little overkill. So we do have a LED ran to the headlight, another one ran to the backup light, and one LED going to each number board, so that's 4 LEDs right there. I did install an extra LED, and it's this wire here. It actually goes inside the cab. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the cab off so you can see where I installed that LED. And the cap should just slide right off. And I took a piece of tubing and glued it, and got the LED in it as well. So that way it does not move. This is so that way at night when the locomotive is stopped, you know, the conductor's having to write things down, and we're going to be able to simulate that light only being on in the stop position, but as the locomotive moves, that light will automatically go off. So it's going to be really cool when we enable the truck lights, the number boards, and the cab interior light for nighttime operations. Alright, so my plan is to take all 4 LEDs for the number boards. They are going to go to function F4, and then or FX4, and then the cab interior light will be soldered to FX5, and of course the positive for every single one of these wires is going to be wired to that resistor. Headlight, of course, will be soldered to the headlight terminal, backup light to the backup light. I'm not going to record that whole process because you can actually go and check some of my other videos to see an actual live, not a live, but a minute by minute recording of how I do these installations, and there's other installations out there as well. But what I do plan on doing is getting this fully connected, tested. We'll put it on a test track, and we'll actually look and do the actual programming for this locomotive. So I will be back here in a while after I get everything soldered and connected together. Alright, so we're back. I've got all the wires soldered up. I went ahead and tested the LEDs, and they all work. So now we got to get this thing put back together. I went ahead and went with the original current keeper, so that way I can put it right here. And hopefully everything will fit. We've got 2 speakers, the 2 mini cubes on either end. That's going to kind of rest above the trucks. I did put double-sided sticky tape on the top of them, but I don't think it's working too well, especially on the front side. But we're going to attempt to get all of our wires tucked in nice and neat. And this is going to be fun, considering that I've got a handrail that wants to get in the way of things. Alrighty, I got the locomotive back together, but I ran into a problem. I made a total goof. I don't know exactly how I made the total goof, but let me show you my goof. I'm going to take the locomotive back apart. Alright. Whew, and it still smells. So you see this little flywheel here, that little black mark? Yeah. I think what happened is when I used this, it pressed down. Make sure I get the right one. It pressed down on the decoder like that when I put the shell back on, causing it to short and fry. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am human. I'm not a machine. I just fried a decoder. So now my next step is to send this back to Soundtraxx, explain to them exactly what happened, and hopefully they will send me a replacement. I'm going to be begging. So, yep, that's what's going to happen next. So stay tuned, and this locomotive is getting a decoder no matter what. So just stay tuned, and we shall see, or I'll let you know if Soundtraxx was generous enough to replace that for me at no extra cost. So, alright, I'll be back in a week or so. Okay, it's been about a month later, and Soundtraxx was very generous into sending me a replacement at no charge. Now, they don't do that for everyone, not that I know of. It's just kind of a hit or miss base with them. So if you happen to mess up a decoder, you contact them directly. They might work with you. I can't speak for Soundtraxx, but what I can say is that they replaced that one at no charge for me. So they were very generous in doing so, and I am greatly appreciated. Now, as far as the decoder frying in the first place, and it taking a whole month to get another decoder, I'm going to make that Heath's fault. Heath over at Humanity Junction. So, yeah, blame Heath. So, yeah. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the decoder out of the bag, and I'm going to go ahead and rewire it all back up. This time, I am not going to put the current keeper in there. One of the things I failed to realize is on most of the EMD locomotives, the top of the hood is even with the top of the roof. With this one being lower, I just don't have the space in there. So I'm not going to put a current keeper in there. I am going to go ahead and put a speaker on this end and a speaker on that end, which will ride above the trucks to give it that really good sound. So I'm going to do that instead and get this thing wired up. We'll test it again and show you what it looks like, and then hopefully we can get to some programming if Heath doesn't cause more problems. So I will be back. Alright, welcome to my temporary test bench. That will be until I can get more of the layout done in the new train room. But let's go ahead and just do a quick sound light test. This is not programmed, so everything is still factory default. So let's see what it sounds like. Alright, so we got our prime mover starting up. And let's turn the headlight on. Alright, we got a headlight. Let's check the rear side. And let's turn the backup light on. So we're going to change our direction. That comes on, nice and bright. And then I'll just press function 0 to turn it off. Alright, some of the other lights I installed in this one is the number boards. So right now, in order for us to turn these on, we would have to hold down. This is for NCE Digitrax. I do not know how you would get to these other functions, but it's function 24 is where I've got this one set up to. So I'd have to hold down shift, 0, 0, and then let go of shift and press 4. And I've got the number boards on both the front and the back lit up on both sides. Another one that I added was a cab interior light. So shift 0, 0, and we'll go function 5. Now we got a cab light. And then I added truck mounted lights here. Shift 0, 0, and function 6 for those. Now I know these are more of a cool white and not a warm white. At the time I could not get warm white in the micro LEDs, so I went with these, but I think if once I turn the intensity of them down, it should be okay. So, alright, so let's go ahead and turn all those off. So function 24, function 25, and function 26. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do some basic research. I'm going to go ahead and shut our prime mover off too. And do some basic research to make sure, one, I got the right prime mover, I get the right horn. Bell's pretty, you know, there's not much difference in the bells. But I do want to make sure I got the right horn and the right prime mover in there. And then I'm also going to do some function mapping, kind of move some things around. And then I want to create a nighttime function. So I will probably set up function 9 for my night ops, which will automatically turn on the number boards, the truck lights, and then I'm going to see if there's a way to make it to where the cab light only comes on in a stopped position. If the locomotive is in the moving process, then the cab light automatically goes off. So that's what I'm going to work on now, and do some research, and then I'll come back and let you know what CV values I'm changing what to make what happen. So I will be back shortly. Alright, so I'm back, and I did quite a bit of research, and so yeah, quite a bit. Literally, I went and wrote down a whole bunch of notes of all the different CV values and what's going in here. So let's go ahead and get started with the basics. So I'm going to try to do all this in real time so that way you can see it. Alright, so we are going to program this locomotive on the main. It is powered up. I just have the engine shut down so that way you can hear me for a little bit. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do on our NCE, Power, or Pro Cab, either or, doesn't matter. We're going to hit this Program Escape button one time. We get Program Loco on the main, and we are going to hit Enter. Alright, the Program Loco is the default number 3 address, so we're going to go ahead and hit Enter. Alright, first thing we're going to want to do is address, so we're going to hit 1. And we're going to put in a long address, so we're going to hit 1 again. Long address is going to be 742, and that is the locomotive's number that you see in front of me. And we press Enter. Try it again. Press Enter. Alright, so now we're at 742. Let's see if we get a headlight. And we do. So we know we are on the right loco. Alright, so the first thing that we wanted to make sure is that the prime mover for this locomotive was set to an Alco 539T. That is CV123, and it's set to a value of 0, which is actually default, so that's one I do not have to program. Alright, now let's listen to the current horn. That is definitely not the right horn, considering that that sounded like multiple chimes, and we only have a single horn. So I actually had to go and look up, and the proper horn type for this locomotive is called a Wabaco A2. So Soundtraxx has it set to, let's see here, CV, so we're going to press 2 for CV. And it's a CV120. And that is our horns. And we're going to set that one to a value of 31. Whoops. 31. 31. There we go. Alright. Now let's escape out of programming and let's listen to it. That is the proper horn for that locomotive. Alright. So now we're going to start programming some of the extras. So, whoops. I got to cycle through all the way. If you accidentally hit that programming button twice, you got to go all the way through till you cycle out. Alright, program loco on main, loco 742, 2 for CVs. Alright, so the next thing I want to program is momentum, that's CV3 for acceleration. And I'm going to set that to a value of 45. And then we're going to set deceleration, which is CV4. If I can get a 4 in there. There we go. And set that to 75. Alright. Then the next thing I want to do is disable the auto start. So in other words, when I turn the DCC system on, the locomotive automatically starts up, and that is something I do not want. I want to be able to start the engine up on its own. But there's also this other feature called the engine interlock. In other words, the engine will not move until that prime mover is started up. And you cannot shut the locomotive off while it's in moving. So, those are both options on CV114. And I don't know if I've got some interference going on with my wireless throttle or not. Because sometimes I'm pressing the buttons and it doesn't want to work. But that's okay. Alright, so in order to disable the auto start, which is a value of 32, that's defaulted, and enable the engine interlock, which is a value of 16, I'm going to take the 32 off, and we're going to add the 16, so we're actually just going to set it to a value of 16 to do both of those things. Alright. Next thing I want to enable is the auto braking feature. So when I brake, it automatically makes the braking sound. That's going to be CV198, and I'm setting that to a value of 4. There is also the auto bell feature, which it's okay, but you can use that CV198 for not just auto braking but also auto bell. And then there's a couple of other CV values. I think it's 199 and 200 that have to do with like the bell ring, but I kind of skipped over that, so don't quote me on that one. Definitely look through your Soundtraxx user guide. Explains all of that. The next thing I looked at was the equalizer on the sound. I'm leaving my sound values the way they are right now, but I could go and theoretically change the volume levels later. The master volume is CV128, and then bell, horn, and prime mover is 129, 130, and 131. But like I said, you can go back and look in your user guide for which ones are which. But there is a 7-band equalizer with the Tsunami2 decoders. You can make a custom equalizer if you wanted to, but they do have a few presets, so I'm just going to use one of the presets, and that's going to be CV255. See if it works. There we go. And I'm going to set that one to a value of 2, and that has to do with speakers that are 1 inch, roughly 1 inch. Alright, so that's just kind of all the basics. The next group I'm going to get into is function mapping. So the first thing we need to do is make sure CV32 is set to 1. Alright, and so the first thing I'm going to do is do CV278. This is the grade crossing signal. And defaulted, it's at function 9, but when you got your horn at 2, short horn at 3, I'm going to move it to 4, which is typically the dynamic braking. So that way I've got my 3 horn functions all together. So I'm going to set a value of 4 to that because that's where it's going. Alright, so, and then function 9, I'm going to do something that, it's a function that's not in the user guide. I'm calling it night mode because I'm running day operations and night operations on my new layout. So I added some extra LEDs on here. I added LEDs to the number boards. I added a cab interior light and truck lights as well. And the truck lights were for, so that way the engineer and conductor or front brakeman could look out the window at nighttime and see if they were actually moving. So that was the purpose of those. So you would only see those lights under the cab. Alright, so in order to do that, I'm going to take CV259, and that is the FX3 lighting function, which I have set to my number boards. That's going to go to a value of 9. Then we're going to take CV's 260, also put that to a value of 9. And 261 and set that to a value of 9. Alright, so CV259 is for the number board, CV260 is for the cab interior light, CV261 is for the truck lights. Now, I want to do some type of automation with those 3 lights. I definitely want, if night mode is enabled, I want the number boards and the truck lights to be on continuously. But that cab interior light, I only want it to come on while the locomotive is standing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take CV's 387 and we're going to set that to a value of 15, which is for standing. Or not standing, that's continuously on. CV388, this is for the cab interior light. I'm going to set that one to a value of 12, which just means standing. Alright, now you can see that it's standing. And then CV389. So CV389. And we're going to set that to a value of 15, which is also continuously on. And now you can see that those lights have came on because I already enabled function 9 before this video started. Alright, next thing I want to do is automatic horn signals. So, and for this time period, there was 3 types of horn signals. Forward is 2 blast of the horn, reverse is 3 short blast, and there is a such thing as a stop signal. Modern trains do not really use that anymore. You might see an occasional short line that still uses it, or a steam era scenic, railroad like Durango and Silverton I know uses it. Probably the Cumbres and Toltec, and maybe some of the other ones like Strasbourg, for example, which I have not been to yet, and that is on my bucket list. But Durango and Silverton, they do have that stop signal, which is 1 blast of the horn or whistle. So to do this, we're going to take CV's 407 and we're going to set that to a value of 1. So now anytime we move the locomotive in the forward direction, we will get 2 automatic horn blasts. Alright, CV408 set to a value of 2. So now anytime the locomotive goes in the reverse direction, we get 3 short horn blasts. And last but not least, CV409, and we're going to set that to a value of 12. So, which now you heard it. So now whether the locomotive is going forward or in reverse, now you're going to get that single horn blast. Alright, the next thing that I plan on programming on here, but I'm not doing it today because I do not have enough track length. But I'm going to go ahead and explain it to you. It's called Digital Dynamic Exhaust. And you do need quite a bit of track length at a level grade. Basically, that has to do with the decoder detects the amperage pull on the motor and will automatically notch your locomotive up and down for you. So if you're pulling a train on a level grade, you might be a notch 4. But if you do not increase your throttle and you start going up like a 1 or 2% grade, it might notch it all the way up to 6, 7, or 8, depending on how much weight that locomotive is pulling. Also, it knows the difference. Like if you're going in speed step 20 and you don't have any cars attached, okay, you might be coasting at notch 1 or notch 2. But let's say that you've got, a 1,000-foot train behind your locomotive. At speed step 20, it's going to be closer to notch 4, maybe 5 or 6, just depending. So, but I'm going to go ahead and explain it so that way you know. And this is for if your locomotive is set, and your throttle is set to 128 speed steps mode. First thing, we're going to take CV31, put it to 16. CV114 is going to go to 47. CV32, we're going to change it to 2. That is an index CV value, which now allows us access to the DDE CV values. The first one being 512. We're going to set that to 16. Then we're going to exit programming. We're going to run our locomotive with no train behind it for a few minutes. Forward, backwards, doesn't matter. Go ahead and get that motor warm and broke in. Alright, once we do that, then we're going to put the locomotive on speed step 1. This is why you cannot use a programming track to do this. You have to do the programming on the main, because you need the locomotive moving while you're programming. So, locomotive in speed step 1, you go into programming. As it's moving, you're going to change CV value 503 to 255. Then, you're going to exit programming. You're going to increase the speed of that locomotive somewhere to speed step 25 to speed step 40. Somewhere in that area. Doesn't matter which one. I typically like to do speed step 30. It's kind of a happy medium per se. And then you're going to go back into programming while that locomotive is moving at speed step 30. And then put it at CV 504 to 255. And then you can exit programming. You can stop your locomotive. And then one good way to test to see if that locomotive, the DDE, is working correctly, set your locomotive to a slower speed step like 5 or 10, and then you could take a couple of fingers and just gently press down on it, press it down to the track, and you should hear it automatically notch up on its own. And then as soon as you take your fingers off of it, then it's going to notch back down. So that's basically programming this locomotive. So let's go ahead and test some of the features that we just put in there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my throttle on. I'm going to escape programming because it still had me in there. And I'm going to turn. Okay, so I got some weird stuff going on. It's like the lights and stuff for all the number boards, cab light, and truck lights are all on, but I haven't pressed function 9. So I'm going to have to go back and take a look at that part there, but that's okay. But we can go ahead and let's see if it moves. It should not move. Alright, so you can see the locomotive is not moving. Perfect, because I did not want it to move. Alright, so let's go ahead and turn our headlight on. Headlight's on. Let's start her up. So starting her up is going to be function 5. And I'm just going to rotate my camera a little bit. It's got a real good sound to it. Alright, and like I said, I'm not going to hit the horn button. I'm just going to move it to a speed step of 5. And you heard the auto horn. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And you heard the stop signal. Change my direction. And let's go back up to speed step 5. and you heard the reverse signal. And we're going to stop it. And you probably heard the braking as well. So to me, I think that is pretty much a successful test until I can get more of my layout built, so that way I can have a long continuous run to program a DDE, or a digital dynamic exhaust. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and wrap this video up. As far as the extra lights and stuff, I'm going to contact George over at Soundtraxx to get some advice from him to see where I went wrong on that. And I will either make an extra snippet after this, or I'll just put that information down in the description below. Okay, so I've got the locomotive back here. I tried to get in contact with George, found out that he is out of the office until mid next week. He is at a couple of train shows. So what I decided to do was I took, CV's 387, 388, and 389, which was the number boards, cab light, and truck lights either being continuous on or standing only, and went ahead and changed those back to a value of 0. And so now they're not going to stay on all the time. But if I do hit my function 9 button, because we did map them to function 9, they do come on. And if I hit it again, they'll go back off. So, I mean, that's better than nothing for the time being. And of course, like I said, I still got to do DDE, digital dynamic exhaust, later when I get more of my layout built. So that way I've got enough room to run this this beauty. So until I hear back from George, who is the light guru for Soundtraxx, in my opinion, he's the one who actually challenged me to do more lighting features in my locomotive. So this is the first one I've done with extra lighting features and installing extra LEDs. So other than that, I'm going to go ahead and just end this video. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry if this was too long, but I wanted to cover, basic installs and all the programming. I know there's so much information when you get into advanced programming, but, it is what it is. And then other than that, if you got any questions, hey, feel free to ask down in comments below. And other than that, I'm going to let y'all have at it. Be safe out there, and happy railroading.